my goodness sake, oh Lord.
This is the tale of 14-year-old George Stinney, who was arrested and accused of a crime when he was taken into custody. Nevertheless, they executed him after convicting him. In the end, the state of South Carolina declared that he was innocent after he was cleared of all charges. The subject of our video for today is the week before the youngest inmate was executed, so let's delve a little deeper into this tale. Death row at 13. In 1994, Al Cholo, South Carolina, is where George Stinney's story begins. The housing that Stinney, his parents, George Stinney Sr. and Amy, as well as his 4 siblings occupied, was provided by the nearby sawmill where his father was employed. Stinney's family endured hardships due to their African American heritage during this time of segregation in America, in addition to financial difficulties. On March 23, 1994, a ditch on the African American side of Al Cholo was where the bodies of Betty June Binnicker and Mary Emma Thames were found. The girls were last seen the previous night riding their bikes in search of flowers, but they had not made it home. Regarding the whereabouts of the flowers, they had questioned George Stinney and his sister Amy. Despite the fact that Amy and George were dating at the time of the killings, as they drove past the Stinneys' property, the police disregarded this crucial piece of information in their search for a suspect. John, George's older brother, was eventually freed after George and John were both arrested on suspicion. Police arrived in the Jim Crow South in March 1944 in search of 14-year-old George Stinney Jr. There was no sign of his parents. Officers handcuffed George and his older brother Johnny and took them away from their home in the segregated mill town of Alkaloo, South Carolina, while his younger sister hid in the family's chicken coop behind the house. The only time George was allowed to see his parents was after his conviction, while he was still in custody. After George's father was let go from his position at a nearby sawmill, the Stinney family was forced to vacate the company housing and worried for their safety. George was detained for 81 days without support during his trial and was kept in a jail in Columbia, which is 15 miles away from Al Cholo. Do you know the specifics of George's conviction? Stinney was found guilty of murder on April 24th and given the death by electrocution sentence following a 2-hour trial and a 10-minute jury deliberation. The legal age of criminal responsibility at the time was 14. A local politician and his attorney decided against filing an appeal. Stinney's initial trial, the evidence, or lack thereof, and the quickness of his conviction appeared to demonstrate how a young black boy was railroaded by a system of justice that was exclusively made up of white people. The Reverend Francis Batson, who found the bodies of the 2 girls, and the 2 doctors who conducted the post-mortem examination were the other 2 witnesses called by the prosecution at the trial, in addition to the 3 police officers who testified. The possibility of assault was discussed in court because of bruising on Binnicker's genitalia. No witnesses were called by Stinney's attorney, no witnesses were cross-examined, and little to no defense was presented. A 2.5-hour presentation was given during the trial. In actuality, Stinney was executed 84 days after the girls' deaths. Stinney was under 100 pounds and only about 5 feet tall. The straps on the electric chair were too wide for his frail frame. Then his body, arms, and legs bound him to the chair. George Frierson, an Alkaloo native and local historian, began investigating it. Steve McKenzie and Matt Burgess, 2 solicitors from South Carolina, were drawn to his work. Additionally, Stinney was cleared of all charges thanks to the countless hours of work by Ray Brown, James Moon, and others who reviewed historical records, found witnesses, and gathered evidence. The testimony of Stinney's siblings, who claimed that he was with them at the time of the murders, was new evidence presented in the court proceeding in January 2014. As a result of his inadequate defense and the violation of his 6th Amendment rights, she determined that he had not received a fair trial. Circuit Court Judge Carmen Mullen vacated Stinney's conviction on December 16, 2014, rather than granting a request for a new trial. While Mary Stinney's family and civil rights activists rejoiced in the court's decision to overturn Stinney's conviction, Betty Binnicker and Mary Thames's family members expressed disappointment. They claimed that, despite acknowledging the controversy surrounding Stinney's 14-year-old execution, they never questioned his guilt. George Burke Jr., the son of a successful white businessman named George Burke Sr., has come under scrutiny as a potential suspect for the killings ever since Stinney was cleared of all charges. Wayne Burke, the son of George Burke Jr., had told her that his grandmother had told him that on the day the girls were killed, his father had picked them up in his lumber truck outside of his grandmother's home. Wayne Burke vehemently denied saying this in 2017 and asserted that he still believed Stinney was guilty. This is all from us today. See you guys in the next one.